I never imagined I'd save my girls' lives, until I discovered their CEO mother shattered mine. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It was the day I learned that what we thought was a simple school board meeting could spiral into a chaos that rattled every fiber of my being. I sat there, clutching the cold metal chair, my hands trembling, anxious, fearful. My heart pounded like a drum in my chest, drowning out the murmurs around me. The air felt heavy, thick with unspoken tension. Across the room, I saw them, the twins, Lily and Grace, wide-eyed and innocent. Their laughter used to fill our home, but now, it felt forced. I could see shadows flickering in their eyes, a haunting knowledge of things that shouldn't touch childhood. They were stuck in a game I never signed up for. Their mother, Veronica, the CEO of a tech giant, had always been driven, ambitious. It's what I admired about her, what drew me in. But now, she seemed like a distant storm cloud, ready to pour down chaos at any moment that I took a shaky breath, pushing back memories of our happier days. The sound of her laughter, her hair glistening in the sun, her impossible smile suddenly felt haunting. Every corner of our once secure life layered with memories felt now like a thin film, the underlying cracks showing. "Mrs. Johnson, please hold your questions until the end," the principal said, his voice echoing disapprovingly through the packed room. I hated the way he looked at me, like I was the troublemaker, not the one fighting for my girls. They were 6, but they carried the weight of adults. Words like layoffs, restructuring, and shares hung in the air, heavier than the chandeliers, casting jagged shadows above us. That I turned to the girls, their little hands clasped together, and felt a pit in my stomach. What kind of world was I bringing them into? I thought I was fighting for a better future, but the truth crept in, whispering a different story. Veronica's decisions transformed into cold steel, a constant reminder of how profits could sever ties stronger than blood. Could she really make a choice that endangered her own children for the sake of success? Just then, someone slammed a hand on the table. "We need to protect our kids." A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. My heart raced. Each voice seemed to beckon hope. The battle was fierce, but now it felt like something was shifting. Could we be the warriors who stood up? Or were we simply puppets in a game played by the high and mighty? But before my thoughts could settle, Veronica stood up. Her voice cut through the noise, cool, resolute. "I'm committed to our future." Her eyes met mine, cold and piercing. "And I will make the necessary sacrifices." There was something chilling in her tone, as if she were offering me a glimpse into a twisted fairy tale where she was the queen. In that moment, I felt the ground beneath me shatter. Was she ready to sacrifice our family on the altar of her ambition? I didn't know if I could watch this unfold. Just as I was about to call out, the lights flickered ominously. A hush fell over the room. I could barely breathe as a single thought crashed into my mind like a tidal wave. What was she really capable of doing? As the silence stretched, my world hung in the balance. I held on to the girls who, despite the chaos, clung to my side, their eyes searching mine for safety. Would they still look to me as their protector when everything fell apart? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. I had hoped that by standing firm against the rising tide of chaos, I could at least shield Lily and Grace from the turbulent waters of their mother's ambition. Yet standing before that gathering of parents, I felt the weight of 1,000 eyes judging me, each one carrying a fragment of their own struggles, of their own unfulfilled dreams, might have sparked a small ember of defiance in my heart. Still, those tiny flames flickered precariously against the harsh winds of Veronica's determination. As the meeting drew to a close with threats of consequences reverberating in hollow tones, I knew I had to act quickly. The girls and I exited into the lobby, where I could still hear the muffled voices of parents debating the impending decisions that felt larger than any one of us. My heart raced, the constriction in my throat growing tighter as I scanned the crowd. "Mommy?" Grace tugged at my sleeve, her innocent voice laced with worry. "Are we going to be okay?" Lily stood beside her, pale as a ghost, biting her lip, mirroring what I felt that I knelt down, cupping both their faces in my trembling hands. "Of course, my loves. We'll always be okay," I lied, forcing a smile. "We're together, and that's what matters." The girls nodded, their trust in me both a heartwarming balm and a nagging weight. As we left the school, my mind spiraled into darkness. What if I couldn't protect them? Each step felt like a descent into quicksand, pulling me deeper into the quagmire of uncertainty. That we returned home to the solace of the familiar, the living room filled with the echoes of laughter and shadows of happier times. I tucked the girls into their beds, hoping their dreams would soar above the dark cloud looming outside their window. But as I sat on the edge of Grace's bed, brushing her hair behind her ear, doubt crept in. "Mommy, do you love us?" she suddenly asked, breaking the silence that had thickened around us. "Always," I whispered, tears threatening to spill. But I felt the need to hold her close, hoping my arms could shield her from the storm that was brewing both outside and within. The next morning, the sun peeked through the blinds, brightening my heart with warmth. A flicker of hope ignited, perhaps this was the day something would change. I decided to visit Melanie, an old friend who had been my rock during turbulent times. Her coffee shop exuded a cozy warmth filled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and sweet pastries, a refuge from the storm. As I entered, she glanced up, her eyes brightening with recognition. Melanie approached and pulled me into a tight embrace. "I heard about the meeting. I'm so sorry, Claire. What can I do to help?" Her kindness washed over me like a gentle breeze, and for a moment, I felt a sense of relief. "I don't know. Just listen. I'm scared." We sat in a quiet corner, sipping coffee as I poured out my heart. With each word, the walls I had built around my fears began to crumble. Melanie listened carefully, nodding and encouraging, her presence a balm to my aching heart. Just when I thought I'd exhausted my worries, she leaned in closer, her voice a whisper, "You're stronger than you know. You've stood up for your kids before. If this means fighting against Veronica, you need to be brave." The thought of facing Veronica again chilled me. I had tasted her cold resolve, I had witnessed firsthand the lengths she would go to protect her interests. But Melanie's words chewed at the bonds of fear, urging me to rise above. When we left the cafe, the world felt heavier, the sun now hidden behind thick gray clouds. As I walked back, my phone buzzed with a message. It was Veronica. "We need to talk. In my office. Today, 5 p.m. Panic coursed through my veins. What could she possibly want? Did she plan to escalate this? My thoughts raced ahead, painting worst-case scenarios as I stood beside the large oak tree, branches swaying, mirroring the turmoil within me. That I was taken back to that moment when I first stood up to her, when everything had felt like it would collapse. Now, the ground beneath me trembled, hinting that the real battle was yet to begin. As the shivers of uncertainty twisted through my gut, I clutched my phone tightly. "Mommy?" A small voice broke the silence. Lily's image filled my mind, clear as day, her innocent gaze full of trust. I needed to protect that trust at all costs, even if it meant confronting the very person who had shattered our world. But deep down, dread pulled ominously, whispering fears I couldn't shake. Faced with the looming threat of that impending conversation, I was left standing beneath the tree, torn between fight and flight. What if this meeting would mean the end of everything I held dear? I took a deep breath, steeling myself. This was just the beginning of an uphill battle. Yet, as doubt gnawed at my resolve, one thought anchored me: I wouldn't let her take my girls away without fighting. She may have shattered my life, but she wouldn't take their innocence. That assurance pulsed within, nudging me towards the unknown danger ahead, leaving me with a chilling reminder: sometimes, the ones you love the most become the catalyst of your greatest fears. I didn't realize that as I headed toward my confrontation with Veronica, an unexpected visitor awaited me, one who would alter the path forward in unimaginable ways. The whispers of the day hovered around me as I navigated the path to Veronica's office, the tension thick enough to slice through. My heart drummed an erratic rhythm, echoing in my ears, drowning out the sounds of the bustling world outside. Each step felt like it was laden with bricks, reminders of the stakes resting on my shoulders that I reached the chrome-and-glass building, the facade stark and cold. Steeling myself, I stepped inside, feeling the cool air swirl around me, sharpening my senses. The receptionist smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I could sense the undercurrent of anxiety in the room, rippling beneath the surface. Perhaps she, too, understood how precarious the balance had become. "Ms. Parker will see you now," the receptionist said, her voice clipped. I nodded, swallowing hard as I made my way toward the polished doors that separated me from my looming fate. Veronica sat behind her sleek desk, her demeanor poised, yet there was a glint in her eye that sent a shiver down my spine. "Claire," she greeted, that faux warmth slipping over her words like a velvet glove hiding iron. "Veronica," I returned, trying to match her composure. She motioned for me to sit, and as I lowered myself into the chair, it felt more like a guillotine than a seat. "I wanted to discuss the future of our daughters," she began, her voice smooth like silk with a sharp edge. My heart raced as she continued, outlining her plans for collaboration between our families, suggesting that a joint project would highlight the strengths of both our daughters while aligning our interests. That it was all packaged so neatly, the offer seductive enough on the surface to lure any unsuspecting parent. Yet, buried beneath those words, I felt the menace, a threat disguised as opportunity. The stakes would go beyond what I had imagined. "Is this really about the girls, or is this your way of extending your reach?" I challenged, attempting to keep my voice steady. Her eyes narrowed, but she maintained her composure. "Don't be naive, Claire. You know the world we live in. It's all about connections. And frankly, how you choose to play this will determine much more than you realize." A crack in her facade sparked my paranoia. What kind of game was she playing? My instincts roared for caution, but the thought of protecting my girls surged within me, igniting the fierce mother in my heart. "I will not allow you to manipulate them, or me, into your ambitions." A shadow flitted across her expression, a mix of irritation and something I couldn't decipher. "You're stronger than you think, Claire, but you should know your limitations. You've always been a side player in this world." Her words stung, cutting through the layers of my resolve. What if she was right? What if my efforts were in vain? But as I looked into her calculating gaze, the fire of my determination sparked with unexpected vigor. I would not be pushed aside or bullied. Just when I thought the conversation couldn't become more chaotic, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, a furrow of irritation clouding her otherwise pristine features. "I'm sorry, I need to take this. Please hold on." I watched as she turned her back to me, her demeanor shifting from authoritative to unsettled, a crack in her armor. It was strange to see vulnerability reflected in her posture, and it urged a nascent curiosity to surge forth. But my thoughts were impatient, and I couldn't let the moment pass without exploring the shift. Suddenly, the office door creaked open, and my breath caught in my throat. A figure stepped through, and with it came the scent of nostalgia, mixed with an unsettling familiarity out of a lost dream. It was Jason, an old friend, one I hadn't seen in years. The way he stood there, taken aback at the situation, made my heart flutter and drop all at once. "Claire," he murmured, his gaze darting between me and Veronica, confusion etched on his handsome face. "Jason," I stammered, utterly bewildered. The surprise faded as Veronica spun around, her personality shifting instantly again. "Don't just stand there. Come in," she commanded. An edge of irritation replacing her earlier calm. He stepped in hesitantly, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. "What is going on?" Yet before I could respond, Veronica's expression transformed to one of calculated charm. "You remember Claire and her girls, don't you? I was just discussing our next steps regarding the partnership we talked about. The implications thickened the air, knotting my stomach in on itself. A surge of emotions swirled, each thread interwoven with the looming shadows of the past. Jason's eyes laid bare his confusion, his concern, and there was again the flicker of an opportunity amid the chaos. I needed him on my side, I needed someone who could help untangle these complicated webs. But just as I opened my mouth to elaborate, the phone buzzed anew. Veronica's face blanched as she stared at the screen, her confidence disintegrating. No, that can't be. An icy dread washed over me, merging with a sense of foreboding. Had she let something slip, or was it possible that secrets I'd never known hung between us, threatening everything? My heart raced once more, but it wasn't just about me anymore. I thought again of Lily and Grace, and the burden of the truth I now carried, the distance between fear and hope growing smaller. As Jason's presence filled the room, he reached out to me, and I wondered if we could rewrite a part of this narrative, together. But as Veronica raised her head, her eyes steeled with purpose, she fixed that predator-like gaze on me, and I knew in that instant, this was just the beginning. I would have to gather my courage, fight against the tide, but most importantly, I had to unearth whatever lay beneath the surface, and fast before it all came crashing down around us. The tension coiled around us like a serpent, unpredictable and dangerous. My heart raced, matching the frantic tempo of the messages undoubtedly streaming through Veronica's mind. I could feel Jason's confusion radiating like heat from the sun, blending with my own suffocating uncertainty. "What is going on, Claire?" he pressed, his voice a steady anchor in the storm I felt crashing inside me. I didn't want to involve him, yet desperation lapped at my heels. The fleeting glimmer of hope his presence sparked was both exhilarating and terrifying that I hesitated, caught between revealing the chaos unfurling within Veronica's hidden agenda and protecting Jason from the mess I had become embroiled in. Before I could make a decision, Veronica interrupted, her tone clipped and unyielding. "This isn't about you, Jason. I suggest you keep out of it." "Why not?" "It clearly involves Claire, and therefore, it involves me." The subtle defiance in his voice filled me with warmth. Jason had always been someone who stood his ground, and an unspoken bond hung in the air between us, yet the responsibility I felt for my daughters brought with it an overwhelming urge to shield him from the fallout. "Claire has been trying to navigate a tough situation on her own," Veronica sneered, her eyes narrowing dangerously as she continued laying out her calculations, her facade cracking with every word. "You're not needed here." Inexplicably, my resolve melted away, and I found my voice trembling as I addressed Jason. "If you could just listen a moment." But before I could share with him the trepidations that consumed me, Veronica's phone buzzed again, this time accompanied by a loud notification sound that boomed in the silence like a gunshot. She glanced at the screen, her expression changing in an instant from irritation to stark panic. "This is not happening," she whispered, the ice in her voice and the tremor in her fingers revealing a depth of fear I had never seen so openly displayed. "What is it? What did you get?" I pressed, the stakes flaring in my chest, contrasting against the horrors that might lurk behind her forced calm. "The board meeting," she whispered, almost as if she hadn't meant to let the words spill. "They know they found the discrepancies." "I can't." My reputation. Her voice trailed off, filled with a depth of panic and frustration I had not anticipated. All my instincts told me to push forward, to press, but the transformation of the woman before me fueled a desperation for answers I wasn't sure I was prepared for. Jason stepped closer to me, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder, grounding me. "Claire, what does this mean?" Before I could respond, Veronica's breath came out in uneven gasps, and she looked at me with a wild intensity. "You know them. You know what they want, the connections, the promises to unions, the bargaining. If I fall, you'll be next." A shiver ran down my spine, an icy realization dawning. The further I spiraled into Veronica's world, the more precarious my own life became. My heart raced at the thought of my daughters, their safety mingling with their future, teetering so close to this ever-crumbling facade of power. "What do you know?" I finally asked, my voice raw, yearning for clarity amidst the chaos. If this was about my girls, I had to confront every dark corner of her world. I owed it to them. Enough, she retorted sharply, her struggle to maintain authority beginning to fracture. This partnership could save you, Claire, it could keep your girls safe for now. And there it was, the balance of danger and hope laid bare before me, taunting me. I stared into her crystalline eyes, searching for a flicker of authenticity behind the threat. What will it cost? Only what I need, she replied, her sharp smile devoid of warmth. Let me remind you, it's a harsh world where friendly faces turn into enemies before sunrise. But if you stand with me, you can ensure your daughters will never know that darkness. Fear settled deep in my gut, intertwining with the excitement of a potential alliance. As much as I wanted to rebel against the idea, the images of Lily and Grace waiting for me at home urged me to consider it. Just then, the tension in the room was interrupted as the door swung open once more. A tall figure stepped in, glancing around cautiously. It was Mr. Thompson, a figure I recognized from our past, the quiet man who seemed to oversee everything at the firm. His gaze fell on Veronica first, then shifted to Jason and finally landed on me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. I need to speak with you urgently, Veronica, he said, his voice low and steady, charged with unspoken urgency. It's about your position. What have you heard? She shot back, panic replaced by sharpness, her eyes darting toward me as if she were trying to catch something slipping free of her grasp. While they exchanged guarded glances, I turned back to Jason, my heart racing faster than ever. Could this be the moment everything unraveled, or would I finally find the thread that weaved hope into the fabric of our fears? The weight of my choices pressed down upon us, heavy and suffocating, and as I glanced between Veronica and Mr. Thompson, it struck me this unfolding drama didn't just involve us. It had the potential to reshape everything and test us beyond the limits of endurance, and caught in this storm of deceit and desperation, I realized I stood not only on the precipice of danger but also on the edge of something profound, something that could either unite us or tear us apart irrevocably. Just as my thoughts tangled further, Veronica locked eyes with me, a storm brewed behind her facade, intimidating and exhilarating, and I knew in that very moment that I had to make a choice. The room felt electric, charged with a tension that threatened to snap at any moment. I could sense Jason's confusion deepening, a shadow lurking over his resolve as I tried to process the surreal tableau before me. Veronica appeared ready to defend her position with a ferocity that made my stomach turn. Yet, beneath the bravado, I caught a flicker of vulnerability in her eyes, the kind that made it easy to forget how she had manipulated my every move up until now. Veronica, I said, pushing through the tempest in my heart. If you think I'll just jump into this without knowing the cost, you're mistaken. Claire, what do you think you know? This is a game of survival. She snapped, her voice now desperate. I can help you, but you have to trust me. Trust you? You've built your empire on deceit. Just look at where we are. I gestured around us, irritation bubbling beneath my surface. It felt as if I were an insect trapped in the web she wove. Even the slightest movement threatened to ensnare me further, yet, a small voice in my head whispered that there was something more at play, something I was missing amidst the chaos. I needed to see past the facade, needed to understand the desperation that inspired her tactics. Jason shifted beside me, his hand tightening on my arm, anchoring me in a storm of emotion. There's got to be a way to work this out without pulling Claire into everything, Veronica. Think about what's at stake. If you're trying to salvage your reputation, this isn't the way. I met Jason's gaze, finding a reservoir of empathy there that washed over me, soothing the sharp edges of my fear. Maybe it's not about your reputation, I dared to say, catching them both off guard. Maybe it's about the bigger picture, what's right for my girls. Veronica's sharp intake of breath drew my focus back to her. Beneath the veneer of professionalism, I could see a maelstrom of emotions swirling in her. My girls, as if you never wanted any of this for them, her tone shifting almost bitterly. You don't know what these decisions have cost me. What cost will be too high, Veronica? I refuse to sacrifice what truly matters for a mere survival game in this corporate cage, I said, my voice gaining strength with every word that I and that instant, the weight of our unspoken truths hung heavily between us, vibrating with unshed tears and the burden of choices yet to be made. Enough, both of you, Mr. Thompson interjected, clearing his throat, positioning himself firmly between us. We don't have time for this. There's too much at stake for all of us. What is it then? I replied, my voice laced with a mix of fear and determination. What do you know that we don't? Without warning, he jerked his head toward the door. There's been a leak information about Veronica's dealings. They might come for her, and they'll certainly come for you, Claire, those girls of yours. My heart plunged. What does that mean? Veronica's composure shattered, her wild gaze darting around the room like a rabbit caught in headlights, panic making her dark eyes gleam. You need to step back, Claire. You can't get involved in this, it's too dangerous for you. You don't understand, it's too late for that, I cut in, gasping at the weight of the truth. I can't walk away when my daughters are potentially in danger. How could I? Damn it, Claire. She shouted, the facade slipping entirely, exposing her desperation. You don't know what they're capable of. I might not be the only one in peril here. Her vehemence veiled a deeper layer of fear, and for an unsettling moment, I felt a strange kinship growing between us, two mothers motivated by a primal instinct to protect what we held dear, even if it was wrapped in shades of betrayal. Just then, a cell phone buzzed, piercing through the suffocating silence, a shrill beeping that filled the room like an omen. My heart raced anew as I watched Jason's expression shift from concern to horror. He pulled the device from his pocket, the screen illuminating his features with a metallic glow. It's Lily, he breathed, something raw and fearful breaking through his voice. She's calling me. Now. At a time like this? Veronica's demand sounded more a plea than an order. Jason, don't answer it, I urged instinctively, but he was already swiping to pick up the call. Hey, Lil. His voice was steady, but the moment he spoke, dread washed over my chest like a tidal wave. Daddy, a young voice broke through the static, panic ringing in her innocence. There are people here looking for mommy. And they don't look nice. Every muscle in my body clenched. Time froze, the world around me fading into silence as I registered the weight of that harrowing revelation. In a blink, the distance between corporate power plays and real-life threats shrank. They were coming for us. For them. Lily, listen to me, Jason urged, his voice rising slightly as if trying to stretch through the invisible lines closing in around us. Just stay calm. I need you to stay put, okay? Don't open the door for anyone, but I could feel the ground shifting beneath me, the solid footing I had held slipping away in the flurry of chaos. We have to go, Jason. Now. We can't let them get to her. Claire, he began, but his voice washed away as the urgency of the moment sharpened reality. And just like that, as if the universe conspired to mock my desperation, a loud crashing sound echoed from the corridor outside, reverberating into the tense atmosphere, igniting a primal fear in the pit of my gut. We had crossed a threshold between corporate deceit and the raw survival instincts of parenthood. The battle was no longer abstract, that it was here, it was now, and it was thrusting us into an uncertain darkness, spiraling faster than I could comprehend. As Jason's frantic gaze met mine, it was clear our choices had irrevocably entwined, setting the stage for a confrontation none of us were truly ready for. The hallway outside our makeshift sanctuary erupted with heavy footsteps, a cacophony of chaos that seemed to promise confrontation. Rushing toward the door, my heart pounded with a primal rhythm, but the urge to protect my daughters surged like a wildfire within me. Jason's fingers grasped my wrists, a silent plea for reason anchoring me in place. Claire, wait. He hissed desperately, his pupils wide as he scanned our surroundings. We can't face them without a plan. If they find us here, but the piercing clarity of my fear drowned out reason. We don't have time for plans, Jason. They're in danger. The weight of his hesitation hung heavily in the air, mingling with the stench of sweat and desperation. My mind raced through every image of my girls, their laughter, their innocence, and the unyielding determination ignited in me as a mother. Veronica, still caught in the whirlwind of her collapsing empire, pressed against the wall with a fierce intensity. She looked between us, each muscle in her face taut with a mix of urgency and unresolved conflict. If we get out of here, I may know a way to protect them. But we have to move. Now. The pounding footsteps grew louder, close enough that every echo of sound sent jolts of adrenaline down my spine. Composed as she pretended to be, I couldn't shake the feeling that Veronica shared my fear, the fear that all of our lives hung by a fragile thread. Which way? Jason asked, his voice low but commanding, his eyes darting toward the door as if he could will the danger to recede. Veronica pointed toward a small door tucked behind a row of filing cabinets. The service exit. It's not monitored. We can use it to reach the back alley, but we have to be quick. There was no time for dissent. Jason and I followed Veronica as she led the way through the room, the shadows stretching around us like greedy fingers. Each step felt heavy, laden with the weight of unformed outcomes, loomed danger draped over our shoulders like a dark cloak. Don't look back, I told myself, even as a trepidation gripped my heart. In that fleeting space, as I moved to follow Veronica, I felt a knot tighten in my throat, a familiar ache that hovered just beneath the chaos. As Veronica slipped through the service door and gestured for us to follow, I hesitated only a moment longer. Lily. We're coming, baby. My voice rang out, an echo that felt futile against the threatening silence sweeping through the vacant halls. Jason slipped through the door behind me and pulled me along. A swath of cold air enveloped us, reminding me that everything I held dear was in jeopardy. The back alley was dim and littered with refuse, a stark contrast to the polished world we were escaping. I felt the grit of desperation seep into my bones that we hurried out into the alley, but panic strangled my heart as we turned the corner wrong. I had gone too far left when instinct told me to head right. Trepidation coiled like a serpent in my gut. Wait. I called to Jason and Veronica, my voice a whisper amidst the lurking shadows. But before I could brace myself, the air vibrated with screeching tires and the sharp jangle of metal. I was on the verge of fading into darkness when the screams of approaching sirens pierced the night, rattling through the alley like a warning shot. Get down. Jason's voice boomed, but the urgency felt surreal, like watching a scene unfold from the comfort of a dream, yet it was not a dream. The world outside receded, leaving only this moment, heavy with terror and the desperate need for survival. Pressing my back against the cold wall, I held my breath, pleading with the universe for safety. Veronica pressed her forehead against the brick, her body tensed as we waited to see if the dangers would pass us by. What now? I whispered as the guttural echoes of approaching footsteps cascaded into the alley, drawing nearer. Veronica's eyes hardened, the fierce gaze of a warrior who had lost everything yet refused to back down. We stick together. No matter what happens, we don't separate. But just as she finished speaking, the clattering of shoes rang out, drowning out the distant sirens. Shadows emerged from the recess of the alley, figures fully formed and alarming in their intent. Jason pulled me closer, his arm around my shoulder protectively. Stay behind me, he urged, but my heart rebelled against the plea. I couldn't let him bear the weight of my fear alone. Terrifying clarity fell over me, unraveling a dark new fear. If I'd acted sooner, could we have avoided this confrontation? My resolve sharpened like a blade, the sting of betrayal nagged at the pit of my stomach. Even as the shadows grew closer, suddenly, a voice called out, wrenching my focus back to the danger. You've nowhere left to run, Claire. We'll find you. Your daughters will pay the price for your loyalty to the wrong people. At that moment, a chilling realization clawed at my gut. They knew my name. They were not just here for Veronica. Jason's grip tightened, but before I could speak, another figure stepped forward, barely illuminated by the flickering streetlights. A smirk twisted the stranger's lips, recognition flared like panic flames in my chest. Hello, Claire. Fancy running into you here. Or should I say, you don't get to say goodbye. My breathing quickened as comprehension settled in. I had thought I was fighting for my daughters, oblivious to the tangled web of violence that ensnared us all. A conflict was no longer carried only by Veronica's sins, it was buried in my choices, exposed to the harsh light of reality. With a single, sickening twist, it dawned on me, the deeper game was far from over, and the true stakes were beyond my reckoning. The sirens wailed on, a cacophony of hope and despair, but as shadows loomed the echoes of my past flared back to life, demanding to be reckoned with. I was ensnared in the corporate web, as much as Veronica had been, and the cost would be far greater than any of us could bear. The chaotic scene before us unfurled with a bewildering intensity, the shadows closing in like a sinister curtain ready to draw shut on our precarious act. My heart raced faster than reason could keep pace with, each thudding beat muffled by the shouts and the tightening grip of fear around my throat. The man who stepped forward, whose face twisted in a mockery of familiarity, felt like a specter from my past, a past I thought I had escaped. "Why are you doing this?" I rasped, forcing the words from my throat as some distant, primal part of me clamored to protect the two people I loved most. "What do you want from us?" "Just a little reunion," he sneered, licking his lips as if savoring the taste of this moment. "You see, Claire, your loyalty has consequences. Veronica thought she could hide behind you, but she underestimated how far I'd go to retrieve what's mine." "Yours?" I echoed, incredulity mixing with a burst of resolve. "What are you talking about?" But he merely shrugged, a gesture dripping with bravado. "Let's just say she's enclosed by more than just corporate secrets." Beside me, Jason's body tensed, readying for any fight he thought might be necessary. I felt the grounding presence of his strength, but my own fear tugged at my limbs, threatening to shake the very foundation of my resolve. I couldn't crumble now, my daughters needed me, and this man, a ghost I had never wanted to summon, was here, taunting with an unknown agenda. "Get away from my family!" I shouted, the words willed through clenched teeth, yet they emerged less a command and more a desperate plea swimming in the tempest of my racing mind. Without warning, a shout erupted from the mouth of the alley, a siren wailing back into life. The darkness seemed to flicker with the shift in expectation. The shadows froze in place, caught between anticipation and dread, while I stood petrified, torn between the urge to flee and the need to protect. "What's happening?" Veronica gasped, her eyes darting side to side, the color drained from her face. "We need to leave, now." Before we could even blink, the shadows pushed forward, confusion erupting between our instants of decision. The figure, my unwelcome visitor, surged forward, but Jason lunged, shielding me while twisting to meet the threat. My heart thumped wildly as the reality dulled. It was a sudden fight against everything I'd cared for. "Help me!" I cried out to Veronica, my voice barely a whisper, coiling with the weight of our shared past. She moved, driven by an intensity only desperation could muster, her body weaving between the silhouettes. The alley widened, becoming a canvas of uncertainty splattered with our choices. Jason met his charge head-on, grappling with rage and fear, a flash of primal protection. I watched, frozen, a witness to the battle, and a whisper of hope ignited in my chest. "We can make it." But then, in the chaos of struggle, a piercing scream shattered the night, rising unmistakably from my heart. It was Lily, echoed within the bounds of my mind, and it brought me back. My daughters were still out there, vulnerable. A tight knot of resolve formed in my chest as Jason fought fiercely beside me, but the shadows were not just flesh and blood, they were the wreckage of my past choices, creeping closer, waiting to engulf us. I had to act, had to push past the fear to protect what truly mattered. "Hold on, let me try something," I urged, taking a deep breath and inching toward the fray. "I need to distract them." Veronica shot me a sideways glance, her eyes wide with disbelief. "No way, Claire. We have to get out, not draw attention to ourselves." But with the chaos spiraling, every instinct screamed for action. Gathering my will, I tapped into every instinct I had honed as a mother. Without a second thought, I raised my voice, channeling all my essence into that single moment. "You want me? Come and get me." The response was immediate, all eyes turned toward me, a sudden shift in momentum ignited by the flicker of vulnerability I was willing to expose. It drew the shadows like moths to a flame, and I seized the moment, bolting a few steps backward, away from Jason and Veronica. "Claire, no!" Jason shouted, desperation seeping into his chest as he lunged again toward me. I felt the terror wrap around me, but hope flickered as I caught a glimpse of something in the distance, the flashing lights and the metallic sounds of growing solidarity. The sirens drew nearer, promising the potential of salvation from this darkness. Yet, the risk grew heavier. I knew the shadows would not relent easily. The figure at the forefront, unshaken by my provocation, pressed forward with an unnerving calm. "This is what happens when you play both sides, Claire. I told you there are consequences." In that moment, I felt a new wave of fear wash over me, not just for myself but for my girls. They would pay the price for my choices, for my mistakes. Anguish clawed at my gut, twisting into a taut coil, making it difficult to breathe. Suddenly, I caught a glimpse of movement from the corner of my eye. Out of the shadows, a figure emerged, not one of the menacing asses but a girl. My heart dropped. It was Sophie, her small frame lost among giants, bravely walking toward us, her little face set with a determination beyond her years. "Sophie." The word broke from me, sounding more like a prayer than a command. But before I could move toward her, the man met her gaze, a cruel glimmer in his eyes, a predator sensing weakness. Well, isn't this quaint? A little bird who thinks she can fly." The world around me constricted as adrenaline blared through my veins. Panic entwined with desperation, I had to protect her. "No, please. She's just a child." An icy dread settled in the pit of my stomach. As the sirens howled closer and shadows swirled around us, I realized with chilling clarity that everything I had fought to protect was coming undone, and my daughters, innocent and unaware, stood at the center of a storm I had unwittingly unleashed. Then, suddenly, amidst the tumult and fray, I glimpsed Veronica stepping forward with an unexpected determination, her past sins mingling with a glimmer of protective instinct. "Keep her safe, Claire," she shouted back at me, and in that blink of shared understanding, I saw the weight of her regrets. She was transformed, not just a woman encased in bitterness but a mother, like me, willing to risk it all. "Wait." I reached out just as the shadows lunged and chaos erupted once more, the clash enveloping us in thick darkness. The cliffhanger loomed as I realized our journey was only beginning, the stakes were higher than I had fathomed, and the tumult of memories pressed down like a gravitational pull, threatening to rip us apart before we even had a chance to come together. The air crackled with tension as I stood frozen, watching the figures swirl around us, a tumultuous ballet of chaos and fear. Veronica's voice echoed in my ears, merging with the pounding of my heart. She had stepped forward, her presence ignited by a spark of forgotten bravery. And yet, as shadows converged on Sophie, my instinct to protect surged to the forefront. I had to act. "Get back!" I screamed, raw desperation fueling my every movement. Jason's face was a mask of horror as he faltered, torn between the attack and the urgency to shield all of us. I could feel the walls closing in, the shadows shifting closer, narrowing the already impossibly tight space between our family and the threat. "Claire, you can't!" Jason yelled, reaching for me, his voice tinged with panic, but my focus was anchored to the sight of Sophie, the small figure edging into unknown danger. There was a light in her eyes, a fierce determination that reminded me of the little girl who believed she could save the world, and I felt that her bravery had somehow ignited a fire within me. Suddenly, I surged forward, desperate to reach her before the looming figure could snuff out her spark. "No!" I shouted once more, voice breaking with an urgency that fueled my need to protect at all costs. Then, in the periphery of my vision, I saw Veronica's eyes widen, the shadows only moments away from engulfing Sophie. In an instant, Veronica leapt forward, her body colliding with Sophie's, blocking her from the grasp of the menacing figure. "Run!" Veronica shouted, the primal instinct of a mother rising to the surface, bravely pitting herself against fear. With my heart racing in tandem with her courage, I glimpsed a flicker of hope that rose from this unexpected oasis of bravery. But it was fleeting. The dark shapes shifted, the man's predatory gaze remained undeterred. You think stepping in will make a difference? His voice was a low growl, chilling in its deliberation. You have no idea who I am, what I want or what I'm willing to do. In that heavy moment, I could see it all, how our lives had intertwined in ways none of us had foreseen, our past, our haunting choices, spinning into this terrifying present. The wound of instinctive sisterhood collided with our tangled histories, a bond that had once felt impermeable now frayed under the weight of looming danger. With precious time slipping away, I surged toward my daughters, summoning every ounce of will I had left. Stay close, I called, voice cracking under the strain as I moved to shield them like a barrier between innocence and menace, but the darkness thickened, the sirens still distant yet ominously growing closer. In that moment of frenzy, I glanced back at Jason, his face a mixture of fear and determination, and I knew I needed to get us out of here. Veronica! I shouted, pulling her glance back to me amidst the chaos. We have to make a run for it. We can't let him win. As if fueled by a collective understanding forged through our shared past and choices, our separate fears converged into one singular truth: we were all in this together now. Veronica nodded, her face morphing from desperation to resolve as our eyes met with the unspoken promises of mothers who would do anything for their children, and so, together, we found an unseen rhythm, the two families united against a common enemy. We moved in tandem, wading through uncertainty and desperation, inching toward the only salvation we could see, the sliver of light creeping at the end of the alley like the dawn breaking over a world long shrouded in twilight. But just as we took our first ecstatic steps toward freedom, a fierce shout erupted from the darkness. You think you can escape me that easily? In a heartbeat, the other figure lunged, the swift movement sending shockwaves through the air. My heart leapt into my throat as horror washed over me. It was Jason, leaping into the fray to intercept the threat, and as I screamed for him to stop, time slowed, the silhouette of his body colliding as his choices simplified into the most primal instinct, to protect. That I stood there, frozen in the split-second tableau, every emotion colliding in a cacophony of chaos: fear, fury, love. But in that surge of energy, I also felt it, a flicker of something warm, a shared hope threading through the chaos, interweaving our destinies. At this moment of desperation, Jason was fighting fiercely, grappling against the shadows, but even as I felt a wave of overwhelming dread at the unpredictability of the encounter, I glimpsed Veronica's determination reflected in my eyes. It was a renewed sense of contingency. If Jason could risk everything, then so could we. Veronica, go! I urged, adrenaline surging as I motioned toward the light beckoning us forward. Get the girls out of here. But then the shadows twisted again, violent and unrelenting. A sudden crack echoed in the alley, a thunderclap in the torrent, and the cloud of fear retaliated, knocking us all back. The ground trembled beneath us, and for a moment, everything else faded into a blur. As the dust settled, the horrific realization hit: someone wasn't he getting back up. Jason lay motionless, his fight extinguished, swallowed by a creeping sea of darkness as sobs rose up in me, fierce, sorrowful, echoing the pain of our shared struggles. The weight of loss drew me down, threatening to bury me beneath its suffocating grasp. Time faltered again, my heart thudded in my chest, loneliness overwhelming me as I watching shadows move closer, poised to strike yet again. But then, as despair threatened to swallow me whole, my eyes caught a glimpse of Sophie, a spark of innocence and bravery, visibly shaken yet undeniably unbowed. She stood amidst the chaos, forging strength from the debris of our past while the horizon of the unknown loomed ahead. For Jason, for all we had sacrificed, I had to be brave for her. Because within this calamity, a new understanding twisted together. Hope could still flourish between the darkest things life had thrown at us, and just as I reached for Sophie, someone else appeared from the shadows, an unexpected ally stepping into view. My heart pounded as the figure emerged with an undeniable familiarity that was both disarming and striking. In that moment, faced with the embodiment of the chaos that threatened to destroy everything I held dear, I realized I might not be alone after all. The ache constricting my chest tightened even further, not just out of fear, but with the imminent understanding that our fates were intertwined in ways beyond our comprehension. As the shadows closed in tighter, I braced for a confrontation I had never anticipated, and with that fear, an overpowering wave of hope surged within me. I never imagined I'd save my girls' lives, but I would do whatever it took to protect this fragile spark of light amidst encompassing darkness. The air was thick with chaotic energy, the shadows swirling around us like a tempest. My heart felt like a visceral echo, pounding against my ribcage with every fleeting second. I could hardly see through my tears as panic and anguish settled deep within me like stones in a river, pulling me downward, desperate to drown the surging tide of the unknown. That I turned back to Jason, the determination etched across his pale face morphing into something that mirrored fear and resolve, each tide of emotion crashing over him like waves against a cliff. But the depth of darkness surrounding him felt insurmountable. Would I ever escape its grasp? Would I ever see his eyes light up with that familiar mischief again? Claire. Sophie's voice cut through my spiraling thoughts, a quilt woven from uncertainty, worry, and small flickers of hope. I turned to her and she was bathed in ethereal light, her small hands trembling yet resolute as they gripped the edges of her sister's shoulders. She was holding on tightly to Veronica, and even as I felt my heart crack, the sight of her resilience ignited a tiny ember within me, a raw, unyielding force that I longed to believe could break through the shadows, but my fear threatened to swallow that ember whole. The figure advancing from the darkness looked familiar in the way my own fear knew it intimately. It was the shape of the unseen enemy cloaked in not just darkness, but memories that clawed at my back. Who had dared to come for us? And why did this sense of dread bubble to the surface of my consciousness, as if taunting me with a truth I was terrified to confront? Get back! I croaked, straining to sound commanding, but my voice fell flat in the din of chaos. We'll find a way out. I forced my limbs into motion, a will ignited for the sake of my daughters, but the haunting memories of yesterday were relentless, sliding into my mind, the choices that led us here, the sacrifices we made and the weight of secrets I had held close to my heart. As the figure loomed closer, I could hear the echo of its laughter, reminiscent of long-buried betrayals. It pierced through the haze with icy clarity. There was no escaping the familiar cadence of that malevolence. You still refuse to see the truth, Claire, it hissed, sending chills racing down my spine, twisting the knife of fear deeper into my resolve. Why are you doing this? The demand slipped from my throat, a plea laced with genuine desperation. You don't have to hurt us anymore. I clutched Sophie and Veronica tighter, losing myself in the comforting warmth of their small forms, the memory of love fierce and unyielding against the cold malice bearing down upon us. Doing this? The figure laughed again, low and sinister, each syllable cracking like thunder, shaking the very ground beneath us. This is not about what I want. This is about what you have refused to acknowledge. You changed the course of our fates, and for that, Claire, this is just the beginning of your reckoning. Looking into the shadows, I felt anger flare within me, fierce and consuming. For too long, I had lived in fear of this moment. I had allowed memories to hold sway over my actions. But here, in this narrow alley, faced with a figure who wielded darkness not just as a weapon, but as a shield, the weight of my choices pushing me back into a corner, I felt the burden lift. They could threaten me, but they would never extinguish the light in my daughter's eyes. Whatever you want to destroy, know this. I spoke with a determination that wove through my voice, ironclad in its truth. You may be cloaked in darkness, but we will not be extinguished. You can try, but you will fail. More than just words, something awakened inside me, a determination rooted not only in a fierce desire to protect my daughters but in a wish to embrace the truth I had long denied. As if answering an unspoken call, the figures around me stirred slightly, as if to acknowledge the small blaze rising from within me, ignited by love and courage. But the laughter continued to reverberate around us, and I braced myself against. One last moment of truth, a spark of hope and dread weaving through my veins as clarity descended amidst the chaos. You're not just looking for vengeance. You want to break us. You want to make us relive the past, don't you? The figure paused, a subtle shift of the shadows rippling like water. Their eyes glinted, holding a truth laden with familiarity that turned my insides cold. You're beginning to understand, Claire. Your family's thread is intertwined with mine in ways you have yet to unravel. All this time, you believed you were protecting them, but it was your love that pulled the very fabric of our fates together. Suddenly, against the weight of those words, a dizzying realization washed over me like a tidal wave, a knot tightening around my heart as memories splintered into focus. No, I whispered, bracing myself against the unrelenting tide of betrayal. But before I could voice the creeping dread building within me, a cry pierced the air, breaking off the silence like glass shattering against tile. Sophie's voice, high and panicked as she pulled away from my grasp, her wide eyes meeting mine, a fear deep set behind them. Let her go. I lunged forward, but the shadows tumbled between us, a swirling vortex returning my daughters back into its clutches as they fought against the unseen force that tried to separate us. In that instantaneous moment, time unraveled, everything became a frenzied blur. Screams danced around us as the figure coalesced, but when Sophie's lips parted with a revelation that cut through the chaos, "Mom, you don't know the truth, it's her." She shouted, the energy radiating from her thin frame like a beacon amidst the storm. My heart plummeted into the abyss as realization drew every breath from my lungs. I turned to the dark figure, tears spilling as the familiar contours began to resurface, faces I never thought I would see again, entangled and woven into the very fabric of our fate. "What are you saying?" I rasped, and the answer hung in the air, heavy and twisted. In that moment, my world fractured. Past and present entwined dangerously, a legacy I had fought so desperately to protect threatened to shatter, leaving me standing at the precipice, gazing into a chasm of uncertainty and heartbreak. The echoes of Sophie's words reverberated in my mind. Her small face, contorted with urgency, framed against the chaos surrounding us, suddenly seemed to hold the key to everything I had been fighting for, everything I had sacrificed. "It's her." The weight of those words bore down like molten steel, searing straight through the fear that had frozen me in place. The figure stepped forward, shadows clinging to her like a shroud, a phantom I had thought banished from my consciousness along with the memories I'd buried deep. I blinked against the chaos, disbelief churning within me until the truth crystallized, sharp as glass. No, this can't be. My breath hitched, heart racing in tandem with the realization threatening to tear me apart. The dark figure straightened, eyes flashing with recognition, mirroring facets of my own anguish. A reaction danced upon her lips, quivering between a smile and a sneer, until finally, she spoke, her voice dripping with mockery that twisted the knife further into my soul. "You think you're the only one who can bring love and destruction all at once?" In that moment, standing on the precipice of pain and betrayal, everything I thought I knew shuddered and collapsed. "You?" I gasped, voice trembling, fighting against the tidal wave of emotions that drowned hope. "You were never supposed to be here." A cacophony of memories surged between us, the love that once bonded us, the bitter betrayals that forged the rift, and the unyielding desire to protect my daughters that now warped into a swirling tempest. "You've turned this into a game of shadows, Haven Tu. The lives of so many hinged upon your whims. What do you want from us?" "Your downfall, Claire." Her words slithered out, sharp and taunting. "Your fall is my rise. This is not just about you or your little family. It's about millions, about power. They are pawns just as you are." A breath caught in my throat. It felt like the darkness had woven its fingers around my lungs, squeezing until I gasped for air. "Why now? Why here?" I pressed, heart racing at the truth clawing its way back to me. "Because now is the time that will break you." As she spoke, something shifted. An unexpected tremor underscored her confidence, as if the shadowy confidence she projected was flickering like a candle in the wind. Could this be my chance? No more. The defiance surged within me like fresh air, filling my lungs, snuffing out the shadows of despair. My daughters were still here, terrified but steadfast, holding on to the edges of our intertwined fates. "I won't let you destroy what we've built. Your threats won't work on us anymore." Caught in the whirlwind of conflicting emotions, I looked at my girls, their expressions revealing fear woven with a breathtaking determination. I could channel that same tenacity within me. We could fight together. "Sophie, you have to trust me," I said, and her gaze met mine, fierce and resolute. Then a whisper of a movement captured my attention, a flash of movement behind us. "Get down." Jason's voice sliced through the chaos just before the sound of gunfire erupted through the darkness. A demonic symphony signaling chaos was drawing close. Instinctively, I shoved my daughters aside, pulling them behind me while my heart thundered in my chest. My world blurred as frozen instincts kicked into motion, ushering them to safety no matter the cost. I could hear the chaos around me, the shouts of the unknown, the sound of feet pounding against the asphalt, and the echo of sirens drawing near, winding like tendrils of hope amidst despair. Then, as the murmurs of the impending chaos loomed behind, I turned, determination sharpening my stance, resolved to protect the ones I soured for. We can't let them win. I shouted, feeling the pulling force of unity surge between the girls and me. We are stronger together. Jason finally stepped into view, outmatched yet determined. Claire, we need to fight. His words jolted through me, and I could feel the weight of every choice crashing against us. Eric, the puppet master of our unfolding tragedy, stood solid in the shadows, digging deeper into the pit of my fears. But for the first time, instead of dread, I felt the raw energy of a passionate fight replace it. Staking my claim against Eric's impending threats, I rushed forward with the vision of both my daughters locked into place, ready to shield them from the oncoming chaos. My heart swelled with the frantic call of fury, ignited by the strength of a mother wielding hope even when it seemed dark. Keep moving. Don't look back. With daunting urgency, we bolted towards safety, and as we propelled ourselves forward into the storm, shadows began to converge upon us. Eric's taunt echoed behind, a reminder of calculations spun out of control, threatening to engulf me whole. You'll see, Claire. You're just beginning to understand the price of your choices. Yet, my resolve hardened. I cared not for his threats anymore. The memory of my daughters pushed me forward, scattering the heaviness hanging in the air. I could feel every ounce of fear pooling around my heart attempting to drown me, but I fueled my resolve with the fierce love I held for my daughters, blending with all that was left, the promise of resilience. Finally pushing through the alley and bursting into the open air, we sprinted toward the glimmer of salvation, the shimmering facade of a police cruiser parked nearby, lights flashing like beacons against the horizon. This way. I urged, the thrill of adrenaline streaming through me, leading us towards safety as sirens wailed closer. Just as our hands gripped the door, the shadows threatened, an explosion of chaos erupting behind us. I glanced over my shoulder, the darkness closing in, the shadows chasing us down. Move! I shouted, urgency burned through my veins when suddenly a voice called out, Claire. My heart seized. I turned to see Jason lunging back toward us, fierce determination etched on his features. I'll hold them off. Just get out. No. It was the pulse of my heart screaming. Disbelief swept through me as I grabbed his hand, desperation coursing through my veins. You can't, but he yanked his arm free, eyes dark with focus, as he steeled himself between us and the overwhelming shadows. Go. I'll find you. The clarity illuminated a driving force, pushing me to trust him. The fleeting emotions, a montage of our lives compressed into that moment, painted every risk he was willing to take. I hesitated for just a heartbeat, wondering if I could truly let him sacrifice himself for us, but realization struck deep. Love queries the uncertain path, tethering everything I stood for. In a split second, I made my choice. I love you. I cried out, forcing the door open even as the shadows loomed nearer, waiting to swallow him whole. I ushered the girls inside and took one last glance at him as he fought fiercely, defiance etched into the set of his jaw, bracing against the shadows closing in. As we plunged forward with breath-rusting desperation, a scream erupted, echoing in my ears. It was a cry that sent ripples of dread down my spine, and it struck me, it could be the last I ever heard from him. But as tears streamed down my cheeks, a potent resolve took root deep within me. Love forged connections stronger than the chaos. Burdens would not crush us, not when the bond between us expanded beyond reason. We will come back for him, I whispered to my daughters, each moment of fear fueling a beacon of belief, forging unity in this newfound nightmare. I promise. We will fight to bring him home. As the weight of uncertainty loomed, engulfing me in shadows, I could feel the vibrant energy of my daughters, urging me toward the uncharted battles ahead. It wasn't over, it would never be. Bated breath twisted through us like roots holding steadfast amidst the storm. Together, we would rise from the ashes, inundated by grief but driven by love. It was in that moment I realized I had begun to save my girls' lives, beginning from within an unwavering foundation, understanding the beauty and ugliness of our reality tied together with that same essence of love, and as the door swung shut behind us, sealing away the chaos just outside, a whisper threaded through the air, alive with hope and determination. We will find our way back to each other. Because beneath the shadows and fear, the light of our bond was more powerful than anything that ever sought to extinguish it. It dripped with ineffable grace, the promise of what lies ahead, forged by love, hunger, and sacrifice, the breath of hope lingering, propelling us on a path still left to navigate. What had unraveled could still weave our stories anew. And with that resolve ingrained in every heartbeat, we moved forward together.